Why was she sitting there alone, staring at her breakfast tray while the entire mess hall watched? The voice cut through the low hum of conversation like a blade through fabric. Is that a real rank, or did they start giving them out in cereal boxes for the JAG Corps? Senior Chief Marcus Thorne's words hung in the air, thick with contempt. Around him, tired soldiers and sunburned Marines shifted uncomfortably. A cluster of Navy SEALs, his team, rippled with nervous laughter. The kind of laughter that says we're with you, boss, even when we're not entirely sure we should be. Lieutenant Commander Evelyn Reed didn't flinch. She didn't look up from her tray. Her gaze remained fixed on the reconstituted eggs and turkey bacon, portions meticulously separated. Her posture unchanged, a study in quiet, unassuming stillness. But across the mess hall, Admiral Vance noticed something the others didn't. The way her left hand rested beside her plate, fingers slightly curled, thumb indexed along the edge as if holding a precision grip. And he knew. He'd seen that kind of calm before, in bomb disposal technicians approaching live devices, in test pilots breaking Mach 3 for the first time. It was the calm of absolute, unshakable competence. Thorne was a walking recruiting poster, a slab of sun-bronzed muscle carved from granite and cynicism. His arms told stories in ink and scars, unit tattoos, faded marks from firefights, each one a silent testament to a life lived at the razor's edge. He carried his authority not just in the silver star that marked his rank, but in the sheer physical space he occupied, a gravitational field of arrogant confidence that warped the room around him. To him, the world was simple, divided into two camps, assets and liabilities, predators and prey, operators and support. And as his gaze swept over Lieutenant Commander Reed, he saw nothing but a liability. He saw a pencil pusher, a REMF, someone who existed to shuffle paperwork while men like him bled. Her uniform, while crisp and correct, lacked the faded, salt-stained patina of hard use he respected. Her hands were clean, her face unlined by the harsh kiss of sun and wind that marked his tribe. He saw weakness, a soft target in a hard place. His contempt was a physical thing, an acrid taste in the air. Seriously, he continued, his voice louder now, playing to the room. I got fours in my platoon who have spent more time outside the wire than you've spent outside an office. What does a lieutenant commander in the Judge Advocate General's Corps even do out here? File reports on our harsh language. Sue the enemy for violating our feelings. More laughter, bolder this time. Thorne leaned forward, planting his huge hands on the table across from her. His voice dropped to a conspiratorial, condescending growl. Look, ma'am, he said, dripping sarcasm on the honorific. This isn't a courtroom. This is the pointy end of the spear. People get hurt here. Maybe you should stick to the green zone where it's safe. She did not look up. She took her fork and methodically cut another perfect square of egg. The only sign of acknowledgement was the almost imperceptible tightening of her jaw, a subtle shift in muscle that a lesser observer would miss entirely. But Admiral Vance saw it. He also saw the rhythmic, steady beat of the pulse in her neck, a human metronome ticking at a placid 60 beats per minute in a room thick with testosterone and tension. The mess hall was a microcosm of the entire military caste system. The operators, SEALs, Green Berets, Marine Raiders held court at the central tables, their laughter louder, their gear casually strewn on adjacent chairs marking territory. The support personnel filled the periphery, logistics clerks, intel analysts, mechanics, their conversations quieter, their presence more subdued. It was an ecosystem built on a hierarchy of perceived risk. And Lieutenant Commander Reed, by all outward appearances, belonged firmly at the bottom of that food chain. She was an anomaly, a question mark in a place that preferred declarative statements. She ate alone, walked alone, spoke to no one unless spoken to first. Her silence was interpreted as timidity, her solitude as fear. The assumptions hardened into fact in the minds of men like Thorne. They created a narrative for her, A story of a careerist officer ticking a box with a hardship tour, utterly divorced from the brutal reality of their world. They could not have been more wrong. But there was something they didn't know about her, something she carried quietly, something that would reveal itself when the moment demanded it, not before. What happens when the alarm screams and everyone runs for cover, except one person? The first piercing shriek of the base-wide alarm ripped through the mess hall just as Thorne was winding up for another verbal jab. The CRAM, the automated phalanx cannons that guarded the fob, began its terrifying guttural roar, BRRRRRT, a sound that meant incoming threats were seconds away. Trays clattered to the floor, chairs scraped violently as bodies scrambled for cover, a conditioned reflex for everyone on the base. Everyone, that is, except one. Lieutenant Commander Evelyn Reed placed her fork and knife neatly together on her plate, parallel to the edge. She took a final sip of water, her movements unhurried, deliberate, almost serene amidst the rising tide of panic. As the all-clear siren blared a moment later, the CRAM had successfully intercepted the threat. A new alarm took its place. A frantic, high-pitched warble reserved for the most dire of circumstances. A mass casualty event, a direct ground assault, or what was happening now, a complex attack on a friendly target just outside the wire. A voice tight with adrenaline crackled over the base-wide intercom. All personnel, code red. I repeat, code red. Valkyrie element is engaged. Repeat, Valkyrie is engaged. Hostage situation at the Dawa clinic. All QRF teams to the JOC immediately. Valkyrie was Thorne's team. The Dawa clinic was a civilian-run medical center less than a click from the FOB's perimeter. A designated soft target. A chill cut through the humid air. While others were still processing, Reed was already moving. She didn't run. She moved with a fluid, economical grace, a straight line of purpose through the chaotic eddies of the emptying mess hall. Her path was not toward a bunker, but toward the one place on the base that had just become the nexus of the entire war. The Joint Operations Center, the JOC. Inside, it was a maelstrom of controlled chaos. Men and women with headsets shouted call signs and coordinates. Giant screens showed a dozen different feeds. A Predator drone's grainy overhead view. Tactical maps blinking with friendly and enemy icons. A frantic live feed from a SEAL's helmet cam. Admiral Vance stood at the center of it all, a grim statue of command, his face illuminated by the glow of the screens. Reed entered quietly. No announcement, no salute. She moved directly to an unmanned terminal in the corner, a station labeled with a single word in faded stencil, Spectre. She sat down. Her hands moved across the keyboard with practiced fluidity. Screens came alive around her, data streams, satellite feeds, weapon system diagnostics. A young Air Force captain monitoring the drone feed glanced over. His eyes widened. He'd never seen anyone at that station before. He'd assumed it was defunct, abandoned equipment from some old program. But Reed's presence there was deliberate, purposeful. Across the room, Admiral Vance turned. He saw her, and for the first time since the alarm sounded, the tension in his shoulders eased just slightly. On the main tactical display, the situation was grim. Thorne's team had been conducting a routine security patrol near the clinic when insurgents had seized the building. 12 civilians inside. A doctor, nurses, local staff. And now, 3 of Thorne's SEALs were pinned down in an adjacent structure. The enemy had them in a kill box. "Sir, we've got eyes on the building," the drone operator reported. "Multiple hostiles, at least 6 confirmed. They've got the civilians grouped in the main treatment room. Our guys are taking effective fire from 2 positions." "Where's our QRF?" Vance demanded. 12 minutes out, sir, but the team on site is compromised. They're requesting immediate support." 12 minutes. In combat, that's an eternity. Vance's jaw clenched. He turned toward the corner. Spectre Prime status. Reed's voice when it came was calm, clinical. Systems online, target acquisition in progress, stand by. The room fell silent, heads turned. Who was this woman? What kind of weapon could save lives from thousands of miles away, without anyone even knowing it existed? Reed's screens displayed something most people in that room had never seen. A targeting interface for a weapon system so classified, its very existence was compartmented. The R9XA Hellfire missile variant with no explosive warhead. Instead, it deployed 6 razor-sharp blades just before impact. A kinetic weapon designed for surgical precision, for eliminating high-value targets in urban environments without collateral damage. It was called the Flying Jinsu, the Ninja Bomb. And Reed was one of only 7 people in the world certified to employ it. Her fingers danced across the interface. Telemetry data streamed in, wind speed, atmospheric pressure, target elevation. The Predator drone orbiting overhead adjusted its position. The R9X hung beneath its wing, a dark sliver against the desert sky. On the helmet cam feed, Thorne's voice crackled through, desperate, strained. "JOC, this is Valkyrie Actual. We are danger close. Repeat, danger close. Enemy is maneuvering for a flank. We need support now or we're going to lose the hostages." Admiral Vance looked at Reed. "Can you make this shot?" She didn't answer immediately. Her eyes scanned the data, the building layout, the thermal signatures, the positions of friendlies and hostiles, the wind variables, the Coriolis effect at this range and velocity. There were 2 hostiles on the rooftop. One had a clear line of fire on Thorne's team. The other was covering the stairwell, preventing any rescue attempt. Both were using the civilians as shields. Both were in positions that made a conventional strike impossible. "Spectre Prime," Vance pressed, "do you have the shot?" Finally Reed spoke, her voice quiet, certain. "Affirmative, engaging first target." Her hand moved to the firing mechanism, but she didn't pull the trigger yet. She waited, watching the screens. The hostile on the roof shifted, moved 3 feet to the left, away from a cluster of civilians huddled below. Now, she engaged. The missile dropped from the drone, silent, invisible to those below. It streaked through the air at over 1,000 miles per hour, and in the final seconds before impact the blades deployed. 6 curved razors extending outward like the petals of a deadly flower. The hostile on the roof never knew what hit him. One moment he was there, the next he simply wasn't. No explosion, no collateral damage, just a precise surgical removal. The helmet cam feed showed Thorne and his team staring upward in confusion. They'd heard nothing, seen nothing, but the threat that had been pinning them down was gone. "What the hell just happened?" Thorne's voice came through, bewildered. Reed was already acquiring the second target, the hostile guarding the stairwell. This one was harder, closer to the building's interior. The angle was wrong, the margin for error microscopic. She adjusted the drone's orbit, calculated the new trajectory. Her pulse remained steady, 60 beats per minute. The second hostile moved, stepped into the open for just a moment, a fraction of a second. Reed fired. The second R9X launched, streaked downward, deployed its blades. And the stairwell was clear. "Valkyrie Actual, you are clear to advance," Reed transmitted, her voice unchanged, as if she just confirmed a lunch order. Thorne's team moved, fast, precise. They breached the building, secured the hostages, neutralized the remaining threats inside. The entire operation took 90 seconds. When it was over, the helmet cam showed Thorne standing in the clinic's courtyard, surrounded by freed hostages. He was looking up at the sky, trying to understand what had just happened. In the JOC, Admiral Vance allowed himself a breath. He walked over to Reed's station. She was already powering down her systems, logging out, returning the terminal to its dormant state. "Well done, Spectre Prime," Vance said quietly. She gave a single nod. "Just doing my job, sir." As she stood to leave, the young Air Force captain who'd been watching approached hesitantly. "Ma'am, what you just did, I've never seen anything like that. The way you compensated for the Coriolis effect on the R9X's flight path, that algorithm." Reed looked at him, considered him for a moment. "It's physics, Captain. Precision takes patience, and patience takes practice." She left the JOC as quietly as she'd entered. Behind her, the room remained silent. Everyone who'd witnessed what just happened understood they'd seen something extraordinary. But they also understood, without being told, that they would never speak of it. Some things remain classified, not because of regulations, but because of respect. How does a man who built his identity on arrogance learn humility in a single day? The next morning, the mess hall felt different. The air carried a weight, a tension that wasn't there before. Word had spread, not through official channels, not through reports, but through the quiet, inevitable network of soldiers who'd witnessed something they couldn't quite explain. Thorne's team knew. They'd been saved by someone, something. A precision strike that defied everything they understood about warfare. And slowly, through conversations in the JOC, through whispers from the drone operators, the pieces came together. Spectre Prime, Lieutenant Commander Reed. The woman Thorne had mocked less than 24 hours ago. When Thorne entered the mess hall that morning, he saw her. Same table, same solitary position, same methodical breakfast routine. But this time something was different. This time he saw her. Really saw her. Not a pencil pusher, not a REMF, not a soft target in a hard place. A weapon honed, precise, utterly lethal. His team watched him, waited to see what he would do. The whole room watched, because moments like this define who you are. Do you double down on your arrogance, or do you have the courage to admit you were wrong? Thorne walked toward her table, each step deliberate. His team tensed. Some expected an apology, others expected excuses. He stopped beside her. She didn't look up, just continued cutting her eggs into perfect squares. "Ma'am," he said, his voice low, stripped of all its earlier bravado. She paused, fork hovering above her tray, but she didn't look at him. "On behalf of myself and my team, I want to formally apologize for my conduct yesterday. My comments were unprofessional, disrespectful, and ignorant." He swallowed. The words didn't come easy. "There is no excuse for my behavior. You demonstrated a level of skill and professionalism that I failed to recognize. You saved my men. You saved our mission." He paused, then added, his voice dropping slightly, filled with genuine sincerity. "We are in your debt." The room was silent, everyone listening, everyone watching. Reed looked up at him for the first time. Her pale blue eyes studied him, analyzed him, not with anger, not with triumph, just assessment. Then she gave a single, small nod. "Apology accepted, Senior Chief. Your focus should be on your men and the next mission. That is all that matters." It was a dismissal, but it was also an absolution. She wasn't interested in his groveling. She was interested in the mission. Thorne stood there for another second, then executed a crisp about-face and walked back to his table. He didn't speak to his team. He just sat down and stared at his tray. A man profoundly and permanently changed. But the story wasn't over, because what had happened in that JOC would ripple outward, would change more than just one man, would become something larger than any of them realized. Later that day, in a quiet corner of the rec center, the same Air Force captain found Reed reading a technical manual. He hesitated, then approached cautiously. "Ma'am, Spectre, I was wondering, the way you compensated for the Coriolis effect, I've never seen that algorithm used. Could you show me?" Reed looked up from her book, considered him for a moment, then motioned to the chair beside her. "Sit down, Captain. Let's talk about terminal guidance." And in that moment, something shifted. The walls between operator and support began to crack. The hierarchy of perceived risk began to flatten, because competence, true competence, doesn't wear a uniform type. It doesn't announce itself. It simply acts. And those who are wise enough recognize it, learn from it, and become better because of it. What happens when a legend becomes a lesson that changes an entire generation? A year passed, the dust of that particular deployment settled, the world moved on, but some things once broken are reforged stronger. Senior Chief Marcus Thorne was promoted to Master Chief, and he stood before a class of new SEAL candidates at the Naval Special Warfare Center in Coronado. They were young, strong, arrogant, perfect reflections of the man he used to be. They had just completed a brutal training evolution. Their faces were masks of exhausted pride. Thorne let them catch their breath before he began. This was a lecture he had personally added to the curriculum, a session titled Unseen Threats and Professional Humility. He didn't use a PowerPoint. He just stood before them, his presence now radiating a quiet authority that was far more powerful than his old bluster. For the last 6 months, he began, his voice a low rumble, we have taught you how to be a hammer. We have taught you to be the most effective, most violent, most unstoppable kinetic instrument on the planet, and you're good at it. He paused, let that sink in. But I'm not here today to tell you how to be a hammer. I am here to warn you that not every problem is a nail. He paced slowly in front of them. Out there, you will encounter threats you cannot see. You will face enemies who do not carry a rifle. And you will work alongside warriors who do not look like you, who do not talk like you, and who do not fit your definition of the word. His voice hardened. Your greatest enemy on the battlefield will not be an insurgent with an AK-47. It will be your own arrogance. It will be your assumptions. He stopped, looked them in the eyes. I'm going to tell you a story about a lieutenant commander I once met at Fob Archer. She was small, wore glasses, looked like a librarian. I made an assumption. I opened my mouth and I disrespected her rank and her presence in a war zone. I did it publicly. He paused, letting the memory and his shame wash over him. I thought I was a hammer, and she was a pane of glass. The room was dead silent. The young SEALs hung on his every word. That pane of glass turned out to be a diamond. Hours later, my team was pinned down, compromised, minutes away from being wiped out. We had a hostage situation that had gone sideways. We had no solution. We were the best of the best, and we were about to fail catastrophically. He took a breath. And from a command center, that same officer I had insulted neutralized 2 hostiles, saved the hostages, and saved my entire team with a weapon system we didn't know existed, using a technique that was considered impossible. She never raised her voice. She never left her chair. She just performed her function with a level of precision and calm that I have never witnessed before or since. Thorne's voice filled with something close to reverence. Her call sign is Spectre Prime. There's a control station at that fob they call Spectre Station now. It's a shrine. Her story is a lesson I learned the hard way. He looked at each of them in turn. The most dangerous person on the battlefield is the one you dismissed, the quiet professional, the one who has mastered their craft so completely they have no need for ego. They don't need your approval. They don't need your respect. They only need you to be wrong, and when you are, they will solve the problem you couldn't. His voice dropped to almost a whisper. Your job is to be smart enough to get out of their way and let them work. The lesson ended, but it would be repeated, again and again, to new classes, new generations. The video file of the Spectre shot became the capstone lesson at the Naval Strike and Air Warfare Center, shown to every new drone operator, every Top Gun pilot, a masterclass in precision, patience, and the philosophy of minimum force for maximum effect. The concept of the quiet professional was no longer just an ethos for special operations. It began to permeate other communities. a shared value that celebrated demonstrated competence over performative toughness. The story of the arrogant SEAL and the quiet officer became a cautionary tale, told to new lieutenants at OCS, to seasoned NCOs at senior enlisted academies. A simple, powerful parable: respect is earned through action, and assumptions are the enemy of survival. Where do legends go when they vanish, and what do they leave behind? Lieutenant Commander Evelyn Reed was never seen at Fob Archer again. She vanished back into the classified world from which she had briefly emerged, her work unseen, her name unspoken outside of secure facilities. But her presence remained. It remained in the quiet deference shown to intel analysts, in the new, more collaborative relationship between operators and support staff, in the sign that still hung over Spectre Station, a permanent fixture in the JOC. Her legacy wasn't a medal, wasn't a plaque with her name on it. Her legacy was a change in culture. It was the humility of a master chief teaching a hard-learned lesson. It was the caution in the eyes of a young soldier before judging a fellow service member. It was 1,000 small moments of professional respect that would prevent 1,000 future mistakes. Because true legacy isn't the story you leave behind. It's the behavior that continues forward because of your example. It's not the echo of your own voice, but the chorus of others who have learned from your silence. It's the quiet competence that builds the quiet discipline, the quiet professionalism that ultimately defines the character of an entire service. It's the understanding that the greatest strength is not the power to command attention, but the quiet confidence that doesn't require it at all. Somewhere in a classified facility, Reed continues her work, unknown to most, unseen by all. But when the moment demands it, when lives hang in the balance, she acts, with precision, with patience, with absolute, unshakable competence. And somewhere, in a training facility in Coronado, a young SEAL candidate raises his hand during Thorne's lecture. "Master Chief," he asks, "is Spectre Prime still active?" Thorne smiles, a small knowing smile. "Son, if I told you that, I'd have to kill you. But I'll tell you this: somewhere in the world right now, there's a problem that seems impossible, a situation that has no solution. And somewhere, someone is sitting at a terminal, hands moving across a keyboard, solving it." He pauses. "You'll never know their name, you'll never see their face, but you'll see their work. And if you're smart, you'll recognize it for what it is: excellence, pure, quiet, unassuming excellence." The lesson ends, the candidates file out, but the story remains. Because some stories aren't about the person, they're about the principle. They're about the wisdom to know that in the modern age of warfare, the battle is often won not by the strongest arm or the loudest voice, but by the sharpest mind and the steadiest hand. They're about the understanding that dignity doesn't need to announce itself, it simply acts. And when it does, the world changes, one quiet moment at a time. Sometimes the most powerful weapon isn't the one that makes the most noise. It's the one you never see coming. It's the hand that moves with precision while others scramble in chaos. It's the voice that remains calm when panic fills the room. True strength doesn't shout. It doesn't need to. It waits. It watches. And when the moment demands it, it acts with a clarity that silences every doubt, answers every question, and commands every ounce of respect it never asked for. Dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts.